The Galactic Intelligence Briefing Room had seen many uncomfortable moments over the past 3 centuries. Wars declared over mineral rights, trade disputes that nearly ended civilizations. That infamous incident where the Crystalline Collective accused the Tentacle Federation of aggressive touching during diplomatic handshakes. But nothing had prepared the assembled intelligence officers for what they were about to hear about a small blue planet in the outer rim. Commander Thek of the Zephyrian Strategic Command stood at the holographic display, his forearms moving in precise military gestures as he outlined the quarterly threat assessment. His purple-scaled hide gleamed under the sterile lighting, and his 3 eyes maintained their usual expression of professional competence. Sector 7 Delta remains stable, he announced to the gathered representatives. The human expansion continues at predictable rates. No significant military buildup detected. Standard diplomatic protocols remain effective. In the 3rd row, intelligence analyst Crix shifted her crystalline form uncomfortably. The light refracting through her faceted body created small rainbows on the walls, usually a sign of contentment. Today, the rainbows were a sickly yellow-green. "Commander," she said, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones of her species. "I've been reviewing the ecological data from the human homeworld." Thek's middle eye focused on her while the other 2 continued scanning his notes. "Earth? What about it?" "The biosphere reports show a garden world. Abundant water, diverse ecosystem, moderate climate zones, ideal for colonization once the humans advance to proper spacefaring status. That's not entirely accurate, sir." The room fell quiet. Crix was known for her meticulous research and conservative estimates. If she was contradicting a Zephian military assessment, she had good reason. "Elaborate," Thak said, his tone suggesting he'd rather she didn't. "Here, I ran the standard habitability algorithms on Earth's ecosystem." Crix continued, her crystalline structure now flickering between yellow and orange, a sign of severe anxiety among her people. The results were unusual. She activated her personal display, and a 3-dimensional model of Earth appeared in the center of the room. Beautiful blue oceans, green continents, white cloud swirls. It looked like every travel brochure for a vacation planet. "Initial assessment shows a thriving biosphere, with millions of species in apparent harmony," she said. "But when I analyzed the survival mechanics, the model shifted, showing predator-prey relationships as glowing red lines connecting different species. Within seconds, the peaceful blue marble looked like it was wrapped in a web of violent red lightning. The statistical probability of any given organism surviving to reproductive maturity on Earth is..." She paused, double-checking her numbers. "Approximately 14%. Thek's 3 eyes converged on the display. "That can't be right. Check your calculations." "I ran them 6 times, sir. I also cross-referenced with the Galactic Biology Database. The average survival rate for organisms on Class M habitable worlds is 87%. Earth's ecosystem appears to be designed around the principle that everything is trying to kill everything else." In the back row, a Nexorian delegate raised one of his tentacles. "Surely you're misreading the data. The humans seem perfectly functional. They've developed space travel, established colonies, engage in normal diplomatic relations." "That's the part that doesn't make sense," Crix replied. "Humans have a survival rate of 93% to reproductive maturity." "Well, there you go," Thek said, relieved. "Your data must be flawed." "No, sir. That's their survival rate on Earth. They've somehow achieved a higher survival rate than most species manage on paradise worlds, while living on a planet that appears to be actively hostile to life." The room erupted in confused chatter. The Nexorian delegate's tentacles writhed in agitation. A representative from the Harmonious Collective began humming their distress song. Even the usually stoic metalloid observer started clicking their joints in what could only be described as mechanical anxiety. "Order!" Seek commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never lost a strategic briefing to data analysis before. "What exactly are you suggesting, Analyst Crix?" "I'm suggesting, sir, that we may have fundamentally misunderstood what humans are." She manipulated the display again, showing Earth's geological history. "This planet has experienced 5 major extinction events in the past 500 million years. Each one wiped out between 70 and 96% of all life on the planet. Ancient history, Thek said dismissively. The most recent was 66 million years ago. The humans evolved afterward. Their entire evolutionary history has taken place on a world recovering from near-total biological collapse. The room went quiet again. This time, it was the silence of people trying to process information that didn't fit their worldview. Furthermore, Crix continued, human historical records show that their species has faced 17 near-extinction events since developing agriculture. Volcanic winters, ice ages, plague pandemics, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, events that should have ended their civilization. But they survived, the Nexorian delegate said weakly. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Each catastrophe seems to have made them more resilient, more adaptable, she searched for the right word, more aggressively competent. Thek's military training kicked in. Are you suggesting they're a threat? I'm suggesting they're an impossibility that keeps happening. Dr. Yuki Nakamura, xenobiologist and professor emeritus of the University of New Geneva, had been trying to explain this exact problem to her alien colleagues for the better part of 2 decades. As she stood before the assembled Galactic Scientific Council, she could see the same expressions of polite disbelief she'd grown accustomed to. "Esteemed colleagues," she said, her voice carrying the patience of someone who'd had this conversation too many times. "I appreciate your interest in Earth's biosphere, but I must stress that sending an unprotected research expedition to my homeworld would be inadvisable." The council chamber was a marvel of interspecies engineering. Atmospheric processors maintained optimal breathing conditions for 17 different species simultaneously. Gravity generators created comfortable zones for beings ranging from the feathery sylph to the massive stone builders. Universal translators ensured that every word was understood, even if the meaning wasn't always appreciated. High Counselor Tethys, a being who resembled a cross between a jellyfish and a philosophy professor, undulated thoughtfully in their anti-gravity suspension field. "Professor Nakamura, surely you're being overly cautious. Your planet has been classified as Garden World Theta 7, ideal for scientific study. That classification is based on orbital surveys and atmospheric readings," Dr. Nakamura replied. "It doesn't account for the practical realities of terrestrial life, such as," asked Counselor Vram, a crystalline collective representative whose geometric form sparkled with academic curiosity. Dr. Nakamura activated her presentation display. "Perhaps a few examples would illustrate my point." The first image showed a peaceful Australian beach. Golden sand, blue water, gentle waves. It looked like a postcard from paradise. "This is a typical recreational area on Earth," she said. "Humans go here to relax." The aliens leaned forward with interest. Several took notes. "The water contains box jellyfish, whose sting can kill an adult human in minutes. The sand is home to blue-ringed octopi, which are both venomous and aggressive. The surrounding vegetation includes stinging trees, whose toxins can cause pain lasting for months." The note-taking stopped. "Just offshore are bull sharks, tiger sharks, and great whites. The rocks contain cone snails that can paralyze prey instantly. The area is also frequented by saltwater crocodiles, which can grow up to 20 feet long and have a bite force of 3,700 pounds per square inch." Counselor Tethys's tendrils had gone very still. "And humans recreate there? Every weekend. They consider it peaceful." The next image showed a lush rainforest. Green canopy, dappled sunlight, the very picture of natural tranquility. "The Amazon rainforest," Dr. Nakamura continued. "Home to jaguars, anacondas, poison dart frogs, bullet ants, army ants, fertile ant snakes, black caimans, and approximately 2.5 million insect species, most of which can cause pain, paralysis, or death." "Surely no one lives there," said Counselor Vram. "About 1 million people call it home. They've been there for thousands of years." She clicked to the next image, a snow-covered mountain range, the Himalayas. Temperatures regularly drop to -40 degrees. Altitude sickness can kill at 8,000 feet. Avalanches, blizzards, and crevasses that drop into darkness. The air contains so little oxygen that most species would lose consciousness. A wasteland, obviously, Tethys observed. Humans climb it for fun. They call it recreation. The council chamber had grown very quiet. Dr. Nakamura could see the expressions of polite interest slowly morphing into something approaching concern. Perhaps, she said gently, you're beginning to understand why I'm hesitant about your proposed research expedition. Counselor Vram's crystalline structure was now a pale blue, the collective equivalent of worry. Professor, are you saying your planet is dangerous? I'm saying my planet is what made humans possible. We evolved in an environment where everything is trying to kill you, where the weather can turn lethal without warning, where a single mistake means death. But you seem so... Tethys searched for the right word. So peaceful, so reasonable. Oh, we are, Dr. Nakamura said with a smile that several aliens later described as deeply unsettling. We've learned to be peaceful because we've had to be. When you live on a world where cooperation means survival and conflict means extinction, you get very good at avoiding unnecessary fights. That sounds perfectly logical, said Counselor Vram, relief evident in their brightening colors. It is logical. But here's the thing about humans. Dr. Nakamura paused, choosing her words carefully. When we do have to fight, we're very good at it. The silence that followed was the kind that happens when an entire room of people suddenly realizes they may have misunderstood something fundamental about reality. What exactly are you saying, Professor? Tethys asked. I'm saying that if you send a research team to Earth without proper preparation, proper equipment, and proper understanding of what they're getting into, they will die. Not might die. Will die. Earth doesn't care about your good intentions or your scientific curiosity. Earth is in the business of testing whether you deserve to continue existing. She clicked to her final slide, which showed a simple text message. Expedition approval. Pending safety protocols under review. Sir, please, she said, listen to someone who spent her entire life trying to survive on the world you want to visit. Earth isn't hostile. Earth is indifferent. And that's so much worse. Dr. Nakamura gathered her materials and left the chamber. Behind her, the Galactic Scientific Council sat in stunned silence, processing the implications of what they'd just heard. In the back row, a junior researcher from the Tentacle Federation raised a nervous appendage. Should we maybe listen to her? But by then, the expedition approval was already being processed. After all, how dangerous could one little garden world possibly be? The humans had to be exaggerating. They always seemed so modest about their accomplishments, so self-deprecating about their capabilities. Surely this was just another example of human humility. The fact that every human who'd ever discussed Earth had worn the same unsettling smile when talking about their homeworld was probably just a coincidence. Probably, what happened next would prove that galactic intelligence had gotten many things wrong over the centuries, but nothing quite as spectacularly wrong as their assessment of Earth. The diplomatic vessel Serenity's Promise dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, with all the confidence of a species that had never encountered a planet that actively disliked visitors. Captain Zex of the Meridian Fleet adjusted his biosuit's environmental controls and reviewed the mission parameters one final time. Standard first contact protocols, he announced to his mixed-species crew. Peaceful intentions, cultural exchange, scientific observation. The humans have already approved our landing at their designated safe zone in what they call Australia. His second-in-command, Navigator Quinn, checked the atmospheric readings with her 6 delicate arms. Biosignatures are optimal, Captain. Standard oxygen-nitrogen mix, comfortable temperature ranges, abundant water sources. The humans have designated a landing area near something called Uluru. Excellent choice, added Chief Science Officer Bex, his crystalline form humming with anticipation. Remote location, minimal human population, low probability of cultural contamination. These humans seem quite thoughtful about first contact procedures. What none of them knew was that the Australian government had specifically chosen this location because it was one of the few places on Earth where the local wildlife was merely dangerous rather than apocalyptically hostile. They'd considered this a diplomatic courtesy. The Serenity's Promise descended through Earth's atmosphere, with instruments recording everything. The planet looked exactly as beautiful as the orbital surveys had suggested. Vast blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in peaceful patterns. It was a textbook garden world. Landing zone visual confirmed, Quinn reported. Red desert terrain, large rock formation, scattered vegetation, no immediate signs of dangerous wildlife. Captain Zex nodded approvingly. The humans had chosen well. This looked like the perfect spot for a peaceful first meeting between species. The ship touched down with barely a whisper, its advanced systems automatically adjusting to local gravity and atmospheric conditions. Through the viewports, the crew could see their human contact approaching. A single figure in casual clothing, walking across the red sand with the kind of relaxed confidence that suggested this was just another day at the office. "That must be our liaison," Captain Zex said. "Dr. Russell Kowalski, according to the diplomatic files. Xenobiology specialist and wilderness guide." Dr. Kowalski was exactly what Central Casting would have ordered for friendly human representative. Medium height, weathered face, suggesting extensive outdoor experience, clothes that looked practical rather than formal. He carried what appeared to be a simple backpack and wore the kind of easy smile that immediately put nervous aliens at ease. As the airlock cycled open, Captain Zex stepped onto Earth for the first time, breathing real planetary air that wasn't filtered through a ship's life support systems. It smelled of dust and vegetation, and something indefinably wild. "Welcome to Earth," Dr. Kowalski said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Hope you had a pleasant trip." Captain Zex clasped the offered hand, marveling at the casual friendliness. "Thank you, Dr. Kowalski. We're honored to be here. Please, call me Russ. And before we get started, I need to give you the standard safety briefing." "Safety briefing?" Navigator Quinn asked, her delicate arms fluttering with curiosity. "Oh, nothing too dramatic," Russ said with that same easy smile. "Just standard precautions. Don't touch anything without asking first. Stay close to the group. If I tell you to freeze, freeze immediately. If I tell you to run, don't ask questions." The alien delegation exchanged glances. This seemed like unusual protocol for a peaceful garden world. "Is there some danger we should be aware of?" Chief Science Officer Bex asked, his crystalline form reflecting the red desert light. "Danger's a strong word," Russ replied. "Let's call it local wildlife management. Earth's ecosystem is a bit more interactive than most worlds." Before anyone could ask what that meant, something caught Navigator Quinn's attention. A small movement in the scrub brush about 20 meters away. She pointed with one of her delicate arms. "Is that one of your local animals?" "It's quite beautiful." The creature in question was indeed beautiful. About the size of a large dog, with gorgeous tan and black markings and an almost hypnotic pattern of movement. It was clearly aware of the alien visitors, and seemed to be observing them with intelligent eyes. "Ah," Russ said, his tone shifting slightly. "That would be a dingo." "It looks friendly," Quinn observed. "May we approach it?" "I wouldn't recommend that," Russ said, reaching into his backpack. "Dingoes are apex predators, pack hunters. That one's probably not alone." As if summoned by his words, 2 more dingoes emerged from the brush, then 3 more. Within moments, the alien delegation found themselves being watched by 8 of Earth's indigenous predators. "Are we in danger?" Captain Zex asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Not immediately," Russ replied, pulling what appeared to be a small electronic device from his pack. "They're just curious. But curiosity and hunger can look pretty similar from a dingo's perspective." He activated the device, which began emitting a high-pitched whine that made the Gungo's ears prick up. After a moment, they seemed to lose interest and melted back into the scrubland as silently as they'd appeared. "Ultrasonic deterrent," Russ explained. "Works on most mammals." Usually, Bex asked. "Some of them are stubborn, but that's why we have backup plans." The tour continued, with Russ pointing out various aspects of Earth's ecosystem. He spoke about it the way other species might discuss a pleasant garden, but every example seemed to involve something that could kill, poison, or dismember the unwary visitor. "Those are huntsman spiders," he said, indicating what looked like brown patches on a nearby rock face. "Completely harmless to humans. Well, mostly harmless. They can bite, but it's not venomous. Just extremely painful and prone to infection." "And those?" Quinn asked, pointing to some colorful birds perched in a distant tree. Rainbow lorikeets. Beautiful, aren't they? Territorial as hell, though. They'll attack anything they perceive as a threat to their nesting area. Beaks like needles, claws like razors. Lost a friend to a lorikeet swarm once. Lost? Captain Zex asked. Oh, he survived. Mostly. Still flinches when he sees bright colors. Chief Science Officer Bex was taking notes with increasing urgency. Dr. Kowalski, I'm beginning to notice a pattern in your local fauna. What pattern's that? They all seem designed to inflict harm on other organisms. Russ considered this observation. Well, yeah. That's how evolution works here. If you can't defend yourself, you become something else's lunch. If you can't catch food, you starve. It's a pretty straightforward system. But how do humans survive in such an environment? Practice, Russ said simply. Lots and lots of practice. The afternoon brought what Dr. Kowalski described as just a little weather. The alien delegation looked up at the sky, which had been clear blue moments before, but was now developing what appeared to be storm clouds with unusual speed. Should we return to the ship? Captain Zex asked, noting the rapid change in atmospheric conditions. Nah, we're fine, Russ said, checking his watch. It's just a thunderstorm. They're pretty common this time of year. Thunderstorm? Navigator Quinn asked. Her species came from a tidally locked world where weather was largely theoretical. Electrical discharge phenomenon, Chief Science Officer Bex explained to her. Atmospheric static buildup causes lightning strikes. Generally harmless, unless you're directly struck. Russ gave him a look that suggested this might be an oversimplification. The first rumble of thunder rolled across the desert, and with it came a sound that made every alien in the group freeze in primordial terror. It was low, rhythmic, and getting closer. Much closer. What is that noise? Captain Zex whispered. Rain, Russ said matter-of-factly. The sound built from a whisper to a roar to something that resembled an artillery barrage. When the wall of water hit them, it hit with enough force to knock Navigator Quinn off her feet. The delicate alien found herself being pelted by droplets that felt like liquid bullets. This is precipitation? She gasped, struggling to remain upright. Light shower, Russ confirmed, raising his voice over the noise. Normally I'd suggest taking cover, but the lightning's not too bad today. As if to contradict him, a bolt of electricity split the sky with a crack that sounded like the universe tearing in half. It struck a tree about 100 meters away, which immediately burst into flames. Not too bad, Beck shouted. There was maybe 50,000 volts, Russ said. Average lightning strike is around 1 billion volts. This is practically a gentle summer breeze. The aliens huddled together as the storm raged around them. Water fell from the sky with enough force to be classified as a weapon on most civilized worlds. Lightning turned the air itself into a deadly maze of electrical energy. The thunder was so loud it seemed to shake the ground beneath their feet. How long do these storms typically last? Captain Zex asked, trying to maintain some semblance of diplomatic composure while being battered by what felt like liquid rocks. Oh, this one's just getting started, Russ replied cheerfully. The weather service said it might develop into a supercell. Those can last for hours. Supercell, rotating thunderstorm. Sometimes they spawn tornadoes. Tornadoes? Spinning columns of air that can reach speeds of over 300 miles per hour. They pick up everything in their path and fling it around randomly. Cars, buildings, cattle. Pretty impressive, actually. Navigator Quinn was now making a noise that her species typically reserve for religious ceremonies or extreme terror. The weather on your planet can pick up and throw buildings, just small ones usually. A good tornado can toss a house around like a toy, but it takes a really special storm to pick up something like a skyscraper. Chief Science Officer Bex had stopped taking notes. His crystalline form was now a pale, terrified blue. Dr. Kowalski, are you saying that your planet's atmospheric conditions are actively hostile to surface life? Hostile's a strong word, Russ said, wiping rain from his face. I'd say more energetic. Earth's got a lot of energy, and sometimes it needs to let off steam. Another lightning bolt split the sky, this one close enough that they could smell the ozone. The thunder that followed was so loud that Captain Zex's ears rang for several minutes afterward. This is what you consider normal weather? He asked. Pretty normal for this time of year, yeah. Wait until you see what winter's like. The storm continued for another hour, during which time the alien delegation experienced their first real understanding of what Dr. Nakamura had been trying to tell the Galactic Scientific Council. Earth wasn't just a planet with dangerous animals. Earth was a planet where the very air and water could turn lethal without warning. When the rain finally stopped and the sun came out, steam began rising from the heated rocks. The smell of ozone and wet earth filled the air. It was, the aliens had to admit, quite beautiful. "See?" Russ said, wringing out his shirt. "Not so bad. And look, we all survived." "Barely," Quinn muttered. "Barely counts," Russ replied with that same easy smile. "That's the Earth way. As long as you're still breathing at the end of the day, you've won." Captain Zex looked around at the transformed landscape. The storm had turned the red desert into something that looked almost alien. Water pooled in unexpected places. Plants that had been dormant suddenly burst into bloom, and the air hummed with the kind of life force that most civilized worlds could only dream of. "Dr. Kowalski," he said finally, "I'm beginning to understand why humans are the way they are." "Yeah? How's that?" "You live on a world that's constantly trying to kill you." "Oh, it's not trying to kill us," Russ said. "It's just testing us. Every day, in every way. Earth wants to make sure we're paying attention. And if you're not," Russ's smile became something that would haunt alien nightmares for generations, "then you become a learning experience for everyone else." The next morning brought what Dr. Kowalski described as educational opportunities, which the alien delegation was beginning to understand was human code for more things that will traumatize you. After a night spent listening to what Russ cheerfully called the evening concert, a symphony of howls, screeches, and hunting calls from creatures they couldn't see but definitely didn't want to meet, the visitors were ready for what they hoped would be a more peaceful day. They were wrong. "Today we're going to visit one of our natural history sites," Russ announced over breakfast, which consisted of what he called bush tucker. Local plants and insects that looked harmless but, the aliens were learning, probably weren't. Great opportunity to understand Earth's biological development over the past few 100 million years. Navigator Quinn picked nervously at something Russ had identified as witchetty grub, a large white larva that apparently tasted like almonds if you could get past the psychological barriers. "Is it far?" "Just a short hike, maybe 10 kilometers through some lovely countryside." Captain Zex had learned to be suspicious of Russ' use of words like lovely and short. On Earth, these terms seemed to have entirely different meanings than they did on civilized worlds. The hike began pleasantly enough. Red rock formations stretched toward a sky so blue it seemed artificial. The sun was warm, but not oppressive, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of desert flowers. For the first kilometer, the alien delegation allowed themselves to relax. Then Russ stopped at what appeared to be an unremarkable patch of ground and gestured proudly. "Here we are," he said. "One of Earth's most significant paleontological sites." Chief Science Officer Bex examined the area with his enhanced sensors. "I'm detecting mineral deposits consistent with sedimentary rock formation, but I don't see any obvious fossil evidence." "Oh, there's plenty of evidence," Russ said, kneeling down and brushing dirt away from what looked like ordinary stone. "You just have to know what you're looking at." As the dirt cleared, shapes began to emerge from the rock. Not individual fossils, but layer upon layer of compressed organic material. What the aliens were looking at wasn't just a few scattered bones. It was a compressed graveyard containing millions of organisms. "This particular layer represents what we call the Great Dying," Russ explained with the casual tone of a tour guide discussing lunch specials. "Happened about 252 million years ago. Biggest extinction event in Earth's history." "Extinction event?" Quinn asked weakly. "Oh yeah. We've had several. This one was the worst, though. Killed off about 96% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. Really cleared the decks for new evolutionary developments. Rushed away more dirt, revealing additional layers. This section here is from the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary. That's when the dinosaurs got wiped out. Asteroid impact, about 66 million years ago. Rock about 10 kilometers across, moving at roughly 20 kilometers per second. The alien delegation stared at the rock layers as Russ continued his cheerful explanation of planetary catastrophes. The impact released energy equivalent to about 10 billion nuclear weapons, created a crater almost 200 kilometers wide, threw enough debris into the atmosphere to block out the sun for months. Global firestorms, acid rain, nuclear winter. Really spectacular event. Captain Zex was beginning to feel physically ill. And this happened here? Well, the asteroid hit what's now the Yucatan Peninsula, but the effects were global. This layer of shocked quartz and iridium tells the whole story. You can trace it all around the planet. Bex was scanning the rock with increasing agitation, his crystalline form shifting through various shades of distressed blue. Dr. Kowalski, are you saying that your planet has experienced multiple global catastrophes? Oh, absolutely. This is just the recent stuff. There's the Ordovician Silurian extinction about 440 million years ago. That one was probably caused by gamma rays from a nearby supernova. Really toasted the ozone layer. Then the late Devonian extinction, the Triassic-Jurassic extinction. We've got quite a collection. He moved to another section of exposed rock, this one showing a different pattern of compressed organic matter. This beauty here is from the Permian-Triassic boundary I mentioned earlier, the Great Dying. We think it was caused by massive volcanic eruptions in what's now Siberia, lasted for thousands of years, released enough carbon dioxide and sulfur compounds to turn the oceans acidic and the atmosphere toxic. Russ stood up, dusting off his hands with satisfaction. The interesting thing is that each extinction event created opportunities for new forms of life to evolve. Clear out the old competition, make room for fresh ideas. It's like planetary house cleaning. Navigator Quinn was now making that religious/terror noise again. Your planet regularly cleans house by killing almost everything? Not regularly, Russ corrected. Just when things get stagnant. Earth's big on innovation. If a particular evolutionary strategy stops working, well, time to try something new. But how does anything survive events like that? Captain Zex asked. Adaptation, flexibility, pure, stubborn refusal to die. Russ grinned. The species that make it through are the ones that can handle anything the universe throws at them. And humans evolved after all of this, during all of this. The last major extinction event happened right around the time mammals started to really diversify. Our evolutionary ancestors survived the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs, then spent the next 66 million years learning to deal with ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, climate shifts, predators, diseases, and the occasional meteor shower. Bex had stopped taking notes and was now simply staring at the rock layers with an expression of crystalline horror. You're saying that human evolution took place in the context of ongoing planetary catastrophes? Pretty much. Every few million years, something would try to wipe us out. The ones who survived were the ones who could adapt fast, think creatively, and work together when things got tough. Russ pointed to the most recent layer, barely a few centimeters thick. This top layer here represents the last 12,000 years or so, the Holocene period. That's when humans developed agriculture, civilization, technology, art, philosophy, all the good stuff. Had her surviving multiple extinction events, Captain Zex said slowly. Yep, we're basically the product of hundreds of millions of years of planetary quality control. Every generation tested by the best catastrophes Earth could produce. The implications were beginning to sink in for the alien delegation. They weren't just looking at rock layers. They were looking at the resume of a planet that specialized in creating survivors. The afternoon brought what Russ called a little nature walk to observe local wildlife in their natural habitat. The alien delegation, still processing the morning's revelations about Earth's history of global catastrophes, followed him into what appeared to be a peaceful woodland area. Now, one thing to understand about Earth's ecosystem, Russ said as they walked along a narrow trail, is that it's based on what we call a food web. Every organism has its place in the system. Food web? Quinn asked, stepping carefully around what looked like an innocent flowering plant but probably wasn't. Who eats whom, basically. Energy transfer through the biosphere. It's all very efficient. They emerged into a clearing where a small stream bubbled peacefully through the trees. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, creating dappled patterns on the forest floor. It was, the aliens had to admit, quite beautiful. This looks peaceful, Captain Zex observed. Oh, it is, Russ agreed. Very peaceful. also extremely violent. Let me show you how this works. He pointed to the stream where small fish darted between rocks. Those are native trout. Beautiful fish. They eat insects, smaller fish, basically anything they can fit in their mouths. As if summoned by his words, one of the trout suddenly lunged out of the water and snatched what had appeared to be a harmless butterfly from the air. The insects, Russ continued, eat plants, other insects, and anything else they can overpower. The plants compete for sunlight and nutrients, sometimes by poisoning their neighbors. He knelt beside what looked like an attractive fern. This little beauty produces chemicals that inhibit the growth of other plants. Very effective territorial strategy. Beck scanned the fern with his instruments. The chemical signature is remarkably toxic. Oh yeah, you wouldn't want to touch that, or breathe too heavily near it, or really be in the same general area for extended periods. A rustling in the undergrowth caught their attention. Something was moving through the ferns, something large enough to create a visible disturbance in the vegetation. And that, Russ said with satisfaction, would be one of our local apex predators. The creature that emerged from the undergrowth was unlike anything in the galactic databases. It moved with the fluid grace of a natural-born killer, its eyes scanning the clearing with intelligent awareness. It was beautiful, in the way that only perfectly adapted predators could be beautiful. Tasmanian devil, Russ explained. Marsupial carnivore. Bite force of 1,200 pounds per square inch. Can crunch through bones like they're crackers. The devil noticed the alien delegation and paused, apparently trying to decide if they represented food, competition, or something to be ignored. Its decision-making process was not reassuring. Is it dangerous? Captain Zex whispered. Everything on Earth is dangerous, Russ replied. The question is how dangerous, and whether it's currently hungry. The devil decided they weren't immediately interesting, and continued across the clearing. As it moved, other wildlife seemed to melt away from its path. Even the insects went quiet. You see how the ecosystem responds to the presence of a major predator? Russ asked. Everything adjusts. The fish dive deeper. The birds move to higher branches. The small mammals hide. It's a constant dance of survival. How do any prey species survive? Quinn asked. Speed, camouflage, toxins, group defense, reproductive strategy? Life finds a way. Russ pointed to a tree where several small mammals were watching them from the safety of the upper branches. Those are sugar gliders. They've adapted to be nearly impossible to catch. Gliding membranes, excellent night vision, social cooperation, and they taste terrible. They taste terrible, Bex asked. Evolutionary strategy. If you can't avoid being eaten, make sure the experience is unpleasant enough that predators learn to avoid your species. As they watched, one of the sugar gliders launched itself from the tree, spreading its gliding membrane and sailing silently to another tree. It was graceful, efficient, and slightly unsettling in its obvious adaptation to a world where everything was trying to eat everything else. The thing to understand, Russ continued, is that this system has been running for hundreds of millions of years. Every species has been tested, refined, optimized for survival in an environment where the margin for error is exactly zero. Including humans? Captain Zex asked. Especially humans. We started out as just another prey species. No claws, no fangs, no poison, no natural armor. Had to get creative. Creative how? Russ smiled that smile again. Tool use, social cooperation, pattern recognition, strategic thinking. We couldn't outrun the predators or outfight them, so we learned to outthink them, and that worked well enough that we went from prey to apex predator in about 2 million years. Which is pretty fast, evolutionarily speaking. A new sound interrupted the conversation, a low, rhythmic drumming that seemed to come from the earth itself. The alien delegation looked around nervously, but Russ seemed unconcerned. What is that? Quinn asked. Lyrebird, Russ said. They're mimics. That particular sound is imitating a jackhammer. A jackhammer? Construction tool. Very loud, very mechanical. The bird learned to copy it perfectly. As if to demonstrate, the drumming stopped and was replaced by what sounded exactly like a chainsaw starting up, followed by the beeping of a truck backing up, then the distinctive ring of an old-fashioned telephone. It's copying human technology? Bex asked, his crystalline form now a fascinated purple. Lyrebirds copy everything. Natural sounds, artificial sounds, whatever they think might be useful for attracting mates or defending territory. Very adaptable species. The phone ringing was replaced by what sounded like a car alarm, then a helicopter, then something that might have been a smoke detector with a low battery. "This is normal?" Captain Zex asked. "For Earth? Absolutely. Species here adapt to whatever changes come along. Humans started making new sounds, birds learned to copy them. Urban environments created new ecological niches, wildlife moved in and made themselves at home. So your species and your planet's other life forms are collaborating? More like co-evolving. We change the environment, they adapt to our changes, we adapt to their adaptations. It's an ongoing conversation." The Lyrebirds concert concluded with a perfect imitation of what sounded like a dial-up internet connection, which was both impressive and deeply disturbing. It was Navigator Quinn who finally broke. They had been walking for another hour, listening to Russ explain the various ways that Earth's supposedly peaceful woodland creatures had adapted to kill, maim, or otherwise inconvenience their neighbors, when she suddenly stopped in the middle of the trail. "I understand now," she said, her delicate arms trembling. "Understand what?" Captain Zex asked. "Humans. I understand what humans are." Russ looked genuinely curious. "What are we?" Quinn turned to face him, and her expression was one of absolute terror mixed with reluctant admiration. "You're not a species that happened to evolve intelligence. You're a species that evolved intelligence as a survival strategy on a planet that kills everything that isn't smart enough to stay alive." "That's actually a pretty good summary," Russ admitted. "Your entire evolutionary history is a story of surviving things that should have been impossible to survive. Global catastrophes, climate changes, predators, diseases, natural disasters. Every generation tested by conditions that would destroy most civilization. We prefer to think of it as character building," Russ said. "And now you're in space. You've left your nightmare planet and spread out into the galaxy." "Well, we haven't left Earth. We love Earth, but yeah, we're exploring a bit." Quinn was now backing away from Russ as if he were one of the predators they'd been discussing. "Don't you see what this means? You're not just another spacefaring species. You're a species of survivors from the most dangerous planet in the galaxy, and you've brought all of those survival skills with you. Is that bad?" Russ asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "For you, no. For everyone else?" Quinn's voice rose to a pitch that made the local wildlife go quiet. "You're going to adapt to every environment you encounter. You're going to solve every problem the galaxy throws at you. You're going to survive things that kill everyone else and then ask if there's anything more challenging available." Captain Zex and Bex were staring at their navigator with growing understanding and horror. "You're saying humans are," Captain Zex began. "I'm saying humans are what happens when evolution decides to get serious about quality control," Quinn said. "They're not just intelligent, they're intelligent survivors from a world that specializes in creating intelligent survivors." The forest around them was completely silent now, as if even the trees were listening to this conversation. "So when other species encounter humans," Beck said slowly, "we're not just meeting another spacefaring civilization." "No," Quinn said. "We're meeting the graduates of the most comprehensive survival course in the galaxy." Ross considered this analysis. "You know what? I think that's probably the nicest thing anyone's ever said about us." The alien delegation spent the rest of the walk back to their ship in thoughtful silence, each of them processing the implications of what they'd learned. Earth wasn't just a dangerous planet that happened to have intelligent life. Earth was a planet-sized testing facility that had been running quality control on life forms for hundreds of millions of years. And humans were its most successful product. By the time they reached the Serenity's promise, Navigator Quinn had begun drafting what would become the most important intelligence report in galactic history. A report that would change how every species in the galaxy thought about those friendly, modest humans who had recently joined the galactic community. The report's title was simple: Earth's planet-scale Darwinian engine produces apex survival species. The subtitle was even simpler: We may have a problem. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called, with a priority classification that hadn't been used since the Great Hive Mind incident of 2387. Representatives from 47 different species crowded into the emergency assembly chamber, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that the universal translators struggled to process. High Counselor Tethys floated in their suspension field, tendrils writhing with barely contained anxiety. "Order," they announced. "We are here to discuss the preliminary report from the Earth Expedition Team. Navigator Quinn has requested emergency classification review for the human homeworld." Navigator Quinn stepped forward, her delicate arms trembling visibly. She had not slept since returning from Earth 3 days ago. "Honored counselors," she began, "I need to report that our initial classification of Earth as a garden world Theta 7 was incomplete." "Incomplete how?" asked Counselor Vram. "Earth is not a garden world. Earth is a weapons testing facility disguised as a planet." The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Quinn activated the holographic display. Initial orbital scans show a beautiful, life-sustaining planet. Ground-based analysis reveals a planet that has experienced at least 5 major extinction events, each eliminating between 70 and 96% of all life. "Ancient history," Counselor Vram protested. "Humans evolved after the most recent event. Their entire evolutionary development has taken place on a world recovering from planetary catastrophe." The display shifted, showing the ecosystem diagram. "Every organism on Earth exists in constant evolutionary warfare. The atmospheric conditions alone should have killed us. We experienced electrical discharges measuring billions of volts, precipitation falling with enough force to cause injury. And the humans?" Tethys asked weakly. "They call it a light shower. There's more. The humans who've colonized other worlds aren't refugees. They're emigrants who chose to leave what they consider paradise. Earth is home. To them, constant mortal danger is normal." Counselor Vram's crystalline structure went completely transparent. "Humans voluntarily live on this world, not just live on it, thrive on it. They've turned survival into an art form. Counselors, I recommend immediate reclassification of Earth from Garden World Theta 7 to Extreme Hazard World designation." The emergency session continued for 6 hours, during which time 3 representatives required medical attention and 2 species formally requested permission to relocate their homeworlds farther from human space. The Galactic Classification Database had been running continuously for over 800 years without a major system failure. At 1437 Standard Galactic Time, it crashed. Chief Systems Administrator Klex stared at the error message with professional horror. "Run the diagnostic again," they ordered their assistant Plurup. "I've run it 6 times. The system keeps crashing when it tries to process the Earth reclassification." The crash occurred when the system attempted to calculate a threat assessment. "For humans, the system is requesting data that doesn't exist," Klex explained. "It's asking for threat categories we've never defined. It wants to know how to classify a species that evolved intelligence as a survival adaptation on a planet. Scale death trap. Can we add those parameters? Our threat assessment scale assumes intelligent species develop on stable worlds. We have no framework for evaluating intelligence that evolved under constant mortal danger." They worked for hours, trying various approaches. Every attempt resulted in system crashes or infinite loops. Finally, Klex made an executive decision. "We'll create a new classification. Threat level, unknown. Recommend. Treating with extreme courtesy." The database accepted this classification. Within hours, it had been copied to every computer system in the galaxy. Within days, it had become the subject of xenobiology courses and diplomatic training seminars. The classification was elegant. When you don't know how dangerous something is, assume it's very dangerous and be extremely polite about it. The transmission that changed everything was sent from the Serenity's Promise 3 weeks later. Communications Officer Zeph was expecting a standard expedition report. What they received was a single line. "Mission status. Humans are fine. They survived there voluntarily. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment of all assumptions regarding human intentions, capabilities, and psychological stability." Within 6 hours, the transmission had been analyzed by every intelligence agency in the galaxy. Within 24 hours, it had sparked the largest strategic reassessment in galactic history. The phrase, "they survive there voluntarily," became a galactic meme. It appeared on academic papers, comedy shows, and military briefings. The implications were staggering. If humans could thrive on a planet that had tried to kill everything for hundreds of millions of years, what did that say about their capabilities? If they considered global catastrophes normal, how would they respond to actual threats? Trade routes were adjusted to avoid human space, diplomatic protocols were updated, military academies began teaching asymmetric threat assessment courses. For the first time in galactic history, an entire civilization had to confront the possibility that they were not the most dangerous thing in their neighborhood. 3 months later, the Galactic Council received a formal note from Earth's human ambassador. Thank you for your interest in Earth's ecosystem. We would be happy to arrange additional educational opportunities for any species interested in learning more about our homeworld. Please note that future expeditions should bring appropriate survival equipment and be prepared for extended stays in challenging conditions. The note was signed, Dr. Russell Kowalski, Director of Interspecies Relations, Earth Survival Training Institute. The existence of an Earth Survival Training Institute raised questions no one was ready to ask. The final line became the unofficial motto of the new galactic reality. Earth, come for the science. Stay, because the wildlife won't let you leave. Nobody laughed. The humans, meanwhile, continued to consider their planet mostly harmless and couldn't understand why everyone seemed so nervous about visiting, which was, perhaps, the most terrifying thing of all.